Good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 3:30 from Hot Air, David Strom is here. We will explore all of the ways the Justice Department is exposing itself as a very dangerous, out-of-control, corrupt agency this week. Steve Malloy joins us at 4 o'clock. We'll talk about the temperature outside. It's hot. The left says it's your fault. Steve will talk about that with us. Ted Harvey is here at 5 o'clock. He's with the Committee to Defeat the President. Yeah, this one. And Cheryl Chumley is here at 5:30 from the Washington Times as we get into that out-of-control Biden DOJ. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would be grateful for your calls today on a Friday here in a very hot Washington, D.C. Was out in the car a little bit ago, looked on the temperature gauge. The car's always hotter than everywhere else, right? You get in the car, and I'm at triple digits right now. 100 degrees. Holy cow. Dave, who's working the board for us today, as he so often does, was telling us he was at like 110 inside of his car. That's too hot. That is too hot. And it's July. It's late July. It's the end of July. It's a hot time of year. The left is out saying this is the hottest month in recorded history. Now, in order to come to that conclusion, they are only using satellite data and dating it back to the mid-'70s. That's as far back as it goes. So the first president, according to them, is Jimmy Carter. There were no other presidents prior to that. History didn't start until Jimmy Carter was president, according to this calculation. Beyond that, we don't have the technology to make a comparison like this. It's the hottest month in history. Let's slow down on that. And Steve Malloy will join us coming up at 4 o'clock. We will chat about it. And one of the things we'll discuss is the value of air conditioning. Isn't that an amazing thing, air conditioning? Isn't it remarkable that it can be nearly 100 degrees outside and you could be indoors and have a cool breeze blowing across your head? Yeah, that's an amazing technological feat that has saved so many lives worldwide. Despite the left's best effort to trim the herd, to thin the herd, people live longer thanks to air conditioning. They survive the hot weather. That's a good thing. Where do we get air conditioning from? From our electricity. Where does the electricity come from? Well, that's from the fossil fuels that generate that electricity, which we need to take care of mankind. And, of course, the left is looking to get rid of it and make your life a lot more miserable. It's an anti-human movement. An anti-human movement. And as I'll broach with Steve when I chat with him, in an anti-human movement, how does a democratic system work? If your policy is to make people more miserable, to kill more babies by way of abortion, if that's the policy, how does that work in a, quote, democracy, or in our case, a democratic republic? How does that work? The predominant successful governments around the planet are democracies. In the places that aren't failed states, they're democracies. Or in our case, a republic. How does it work if your policy is to destroy humanity? It doesn't. Which means the logical endgame here for these guys is not the fulfillment of, quote, democracy. It's tyranny. The only way you can advance these policies is to crush people and to override their desire for survival. That's it. That's where this is headed. So don't let them trick you into giving up your liberty, your family's liberty, your energy, your ability to take care of your family, to keep them comfortable, your transportation, your ability to move great distances. They want to rob people of this. They have this, this unquenchable thirst for power. And whether it's at the local level, the state level, the presidential level, the global level in the form of the World Economic Forum or the United Nations, they're constantly telling you that they have to fly private to their next conference to tell you why you're not allowed to leave your house. They can go everywhere on the planet. They can go visit Jeffrey Epstein's island endless numbers of times. But you have to stay locked at home, preferably in a high-rise apartment, preferably in a dangerous city, without the ability to move any great distance whatsoever. So be on guard for that, obviously. in our country right now, and certainly around the world. We're going to get into some of the big Justice Department stuff today. As the Justice Department, 3 big stories this week. Have you been paying attention to the 3 stories? And if you can guess them, what are the 3 big Justice Department stories this week? One that may jump to mind immediately for you is Hunter Biden, right? This nasty little plea deal, that dirty little plea deal that they worked out for Hunter Biden, the one where he would get away with literally everything. Everything. And they tried to pull a fast one on the judge. They snuck the non-prosecution agreement into a separate document and said, don't you worry your little head about that document, Judge. Just rubber stamp the one we gave you and we'll move on. But she read the document, and so she slammed on the brakes. That's 1. 2, Donald Trump. You saw what happened in the last 24 hours. New charges for Donald Trump. They claim he was trying to destroy evidence, trying to obstruct justice in his document dispute with Joe Biden, as they go after a former president of the United States who made the decision to take various documents with him when he left the presidency, implicitly declassifying them, taking them with him. He was the president of the United States. He was empowered to make that very decision. And now, of course, it's been criminalized. And the Biden administration has decided that they want to use this document dispute to destroy their top political opponents. So there is that. And it's not just these new charges against Trump that we're paying attention to. We're also looking at the fact that Biden is now trying to crush a Mar-a-Lago maintenance worker by the name of Carlos de Oliveira. This poor guy, he's 56 years old. He's a maintenance worker at Mar-a-Lago. You know, he hangs the storm shutters when the hurricanes come through. That's what his job is. He does, he's a handyman. He fixes stuff. The sink is busted. Call Carlos. Now he has the full weight of the United States federal government coming down on his head. He will be crushed. Carlos doesn't have a 6-vehicle motorcade to take him to and from his court proceedings. He doesn't have Secret Service protection to care for him, to look after his every need. He doesn't live in the White House when he's not in a Delaware courtroom. No, Carlos has a very different situation. Carlos has whatever generosity Donald Trump will afford to him and whatever money he's got saved up. That's what he has right now, as the Biden Justice Department is deciding that they want to crush him. So now they're crushing maintenance workers and forgiving the president's ne'er-do-well son. There's that. And then finally, the third big story with the Justice Department this week is the decision to drop yet another charge for Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried is he's the second biggest Democrat donor in the country. He's the man who stands accused of scamming so many people out of their money in a crypto scam. And then he was slapped with a number of charges. But overnight, we get an update on what's going on with this guy, and they've decided to drop yet another charge for the guy. When I say yet another charge, let me take you back in time for a moment to what happened with him. A couple months ago, in fact, last month, it was June, the Biden Department of Justice dropped 5 charges against Sam Bankman-Fried, dropped 5 of them. Federal prosecutors, according to the New York Times back in June, investigating the collapse of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange, said late Wednesday that at least for now, they would withdraw several of the charges facing the company's founder, Sam Bankman-Fried. In a court filing, the prosecutors said they would proceed to a trial in October without pursuing 5 of the 13 charges against Mr. Bankman-Fried, a set of accusations that the government added to the crypto mogul's indictment in the months after he was extradited from the Bahamas in December. Among those charges, a bank fraud count, as well as an allegation that Mr. Bankman-Fried bribed a foreign government. All right, so here you have the Biden administration already deciding, let's go a little easier on our donor. The guy who's given so much money to Democrats, let's not hassle him too much. Sure, he'll go to a trial. So some of these charges will still be tried in a courtroom. But 5 are disappearing. Bye-bye. So Sam Bankman-Fried gets off on those 5. And then additionally, we get this new announcement this week that federal prosecutors pursuing the case against the cryptocurrency mogul, Sam Bankman-Fried, New York Times again, said that they were dropping a charge that he violated campaign finance rules. Oh, campaign finance rules. So now he gets away with a campaign finance violation. Mr. Bankman-Fried was charged with fraud and campaign finance violations in December after the sudden collapse of his company. He was quickly extradited to the United States from the Bahamas. In a court filing Wednesday night, the prosecutor said the Bahamas had informed them that the nation's government hadn't intended to extradite Mr. Bankman-Fried on the campaign finance charge. So what did the Justice Department do? Oh, okay, we'll get rid of it. Now, campaign finance seems like an interesting charge to drop for Sam Bankman-Fried, considering he's the second biggest donor to Democrats in the country. So the Biden DOJ just dropped a charge that involved who? Politicians. Democrats. The charge that was closest to people in power disappeared. So, in case you're wondering what is happening this week, the United States Department of Justice is corrupt in a very florid way. They are as self-evidently corrupt as it gets. We'll be talking coming up with David Strom about this. He's detected all of this as well. He's saying, man, this is transparent. And David is one of these guys. I know a lot of these guys that they're very sober. They're careful. They don't leap to conclusions here. They just kind of wait for the evidence to come in. But how much more evidence do you need? How much more evidence do you need? And so this week, one of the things that bugs me about this week, in addition to the outright corruption, I'm glad people are detecting it. I'm glad so many people are seeing it now. But one of the things that bugs me this week is that it seems like some of these Republican presidential candidates can't keep their eye on the ball. They're not focused on all of the abuses against the American people. And instead, they're nitpicking each other for some of the dumbest crap imaginable. Stop it. Stop it. Don't join in any left-wing pileups. Don't come give me a throat-clearing understanding of, well, the Justice Department has to look into this thing, but this thing seems like a little excessive. Stop it. If you're a Republican presidential candidate right now, including Donald Trump, the frontrunner, your obligation is to represent the American people, to tell them you will be a killer on their behalf. You will aggressively restore what makes this country great. You will fight tooth and nail for the interests of the American public. And you won't get sucked into nonsense and distractions. And some of these guys, they're getting sucked into nonsense and distractions. And especially the guys who aren't Trump, if you want to distinguish yourself, if you want to rise here, you damn well better be talking about stuff that voters actually care about. That's it. It's a very simple prescription. And yet, they keep messing it up. I've got some audio for you to support that argument. I want to talk about what some of these guys are saying this week. Like I said, we got to get into this Justice Department again as they try and pull a fast one on the judge, especially in that Hunter Biden case. They sent her, now you should see my Twitter account. It's going crazy. It's on fire this week because I just was sharing portions of the court transcript. And in the court transcript, we discovered that the judge wasn't even aware of this blanket immunity paragraph, the infamous paragraph 15, until the morning of the hearing. They kept it away from her until just before the hearing began. They handed it over to her. And luckily, she apparently has a quick mind because she read through this thing and she goes, wait a second. Wait, you're going to give him blanket immunity to every crime ever? Is there any precedent for this? And the guys in the room had to say, no, Your Honor. No, there's not a precedent for this. And so she slammed the brakes this week, and rightfully so. Yeah, Tim Scott is on the campaign trail right now, and he was asked about this business in Florida. Remember, Florida's education standards are they're the gold standard for the country in terms of American history. They're fantastic. And they teach about not only the true horrors of slavery, but the full context of slavery as it existed around the world, and certainly here in the United States, including the resilience of slaves who were able to basically endure all of this and, despite the horrors that they faced, come out of it and make lives for themselves after emancipation. An amazing story, right? The kind of story you would want to tell in a classroom. The left is attacking Florida for saying that slaves had any agency whatsoever. They're trying to erase the achievements of these former slaves, which is contemptible. And Senator Tim Scott, perhaps scared by the New York Times editorial page or something, decided he would join the dog pile, which is not smart. This is a bad idea. Why would you do that? Here's Tim Scott.
As a country founded upon freedom, the greatest deprivation of freedom was slavery. There's no silver lining in freedom.
He said, as a country founded on freedom, the greatest deprivation of freedom was slavery. There is no silver lining in slavery. Well, of course not.
Slavery. The truth is that anything you can learn, that any benefits that people suggest you had during slavery, you would have had as a free person.
Nobody said there was a benefit to slavery. There's not a single person other than the left. So look, let's give Tim Scott the benefit of the doubt. He has knowledge of this because he obtained it through the distortion filter of the media. Don't do that. Read the actual documents. Listen to the people who actually wrote the standards. And this is, unfortunately for him, a knock against his competency to be president of the United States. If you can't look for the original source material, then you're not the guy.
What slavery was really about separating families, about mutilating humans, and even raping their wives. It was just devastating. So I would hope that every person in our country, and certainly running for president, would appreciate that. And listen, people have bad days. Sometimes they regret what they say, and we should ask them again to clarify their positions.
All right, so Tim Scott, you heard people have bad days. Sometimes they regret what they say. It's basically saying, I'm giving Ron DeSantis an opening here to correct himself. Well, DeSantis was asked about this. Megyn Kelly asked, and here's what Ron DeSantis had to say.
What do you think about what...
Oh, it wasn't, sorry, not Megyn Kelly. Somebody else asked.
Scott said.
You know, I think part of the reason our country has struggled is because D.C. Republicans all too often accept false narratives. Accept lies that are perpetrated by the left, and to accept the lie that Kamala Harris has been perpetrating, even when that has been debunked. That's not the way you do it. The way you do it, the way you lead, is to fight back against the lies, is to speak the truth.
Definitely.
So I'm here defending my state of Florida against false accusations and against lies, and we're going to continue to speak the truth.
All right, so he's right on point with that answer. That's perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah, don't fall for that. And look, we all make mistakes. Tim Scott made a mistake here. He should learn from it, I think. All right, hold tight. We've got more ahead. We'll be joined by David Strom in a moment as we talk about the unprecedented corruption we're seeing out of the United States Department of Justice. A lot more ahead. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:34 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Steve Malloy is here, former Trump-Pence EPA transition team member. We'll chat with him about the hottest month in history. Ted Harvey joins us at 5 o'clock from the committee to defeat the president. That would be Joe Biden. We'll find out whether or not he thinks Joe Biden's headed for the end of his presidency. Could it be coming soon? And Cheryl Chumley is with us at 5:30 from the Washington Times as we take a closer look at the Justice Department in the Biden administration being used to crush Joe Biden's top political opponent and everyone around him. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We talk about the United States Department of Justice. They have been just so visibly out of control this week. And that's the subject of my next conversation, because I want to talk to a guy who's been paying attention to this, and he's detected these patterns. He is David Strom. He's a great writer over at Hot Air, and he joins us on the phone. David, happy Friday to you. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, it's nice to have the weekend coming.
It is nice to have the weekend coming. Yes, indeed. We can get out and enjoy some of this heat. Hey, tell me, have you ever seen the Justice Department be so obviously political and corrupt as we have this week? And I know we have a lot of evidence in the last few years, but boy, this one seems like a big one.
Well, look, I mean, there's 3 incidents this week that really are undeniably politically motivated, have nothing to do with justice. Everyone's familiar with, the ongoing saga of Donald Trump, yes. But there are 2 other things that popped up this week. First, the absolute fraud that the Justice Department tried to perpetrate on both the American people and on a judge, a federal judge with the Hunter Biden case, and then, of course, dropping the charges against Sam Bankman-Fried, yes. With regard to $90 million of illegal contributions to Democrats. So basically they're going to still prosecute Sam Bankman-Fried so that they can say, well, see, we went after him. This wasn't political. But
Right.
by taking these charges off, they're letting the entire Democratic Party skate on $90 million worth of fraudulent campaign contributions.
Right, because in a court proceeding, they would have to name the campaigns that received the money. You'd have to actually lay out all of the facts. Who did he fraudulently give the money to? Who was the beneficiary? And there are too many important, powerful Democrats whose names would come up, and it would be embarrassing to them. It would be too difficult for them to have to navigate. So they just made it go away, David.
Oh, that's exactly what happened. And, the idea that somehow we were bullied by the Bahamas to drop these charges, especially since we already know that Sam Bankman-Fried bribed the government officials in Bahamas. So it's just, the whole thing is so absurd.
Yes.
And
like the Bahamas are looking out for Sam Bankman-Fried. They're like, hey, that's our guy. Don't hassle him too much.
And then the Hunter Biden thing, I think a lot of people don't really understand what the Justice Department tried to do. Everyone thought that this plea deal was about these 3 charges that were already absurd. I mean, the idea that these felonies are going to be misdemeanors with no jail time or anything else was absurd. Right. But buried in an annex, an appendix to a separate document, they actually gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card for everything he has ever done in the past. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
The language was
Yeah,
really convoluted, but if you just stare at it for a minute, and that's what the judge did, she detected, wait a second, this is blanket immunity. They said you can't be charged with any federal crimes for any of the following facts. And the facts included all of his business dealings in Russia and China and Romania and all of the money he was making, his law work, everything. He couldn't be charged in any way for any of those past events. They said the only thing you can be charged for is any future crimes you may commit.
Yeah, it was the equivalent of a presidential pardon. Joe Biden has said, oh my gosh, no, I would never pardon my son. That would be unethical. And so he's trying to have the Justice Department give him a blanket pardon for everything that he's ever done.
Right.
I mean, it's just staggering to look at this and understand. I gotta toss this in because a lot of I saw a lot of commentators out there saying, oh, I can't believe how incompetent the U.S. attorney was. Didn't they understand what they were? Oh, come on. I mean, if you've ever met a U.S. attorney, these are not dunces. I mean, these people go on to become multi-million-dollar performers in law firms. This is a stepping stone, unless they're, some kind of affirmative action hire. This is a stepping stone to the elite. These people knew exactly what they were doing, and there was a reason why they were doing it. They were told to do it.
Yes, and it's not like Hunter Biden has, cheap public defenders or something. He's got some of the top lawyers in the country representing him. And as they say in the court transcript, this final document, what they thought was going to be the final document, was the product of over 5 years of negotiations, hours on end, line by line examinations. They admitted all of this in court. So there's no mistakes here. This was built explicitly to give him blanket immunity. And everybody involved thought they were going to pull a fast one on the judge. I think Hunter Biden himself may have been left out of some of these conversations because it looks to me, based on the court transcript, he's kind of the one who accidentally blew this up. Because when the judge started laying out the details, okay, so if you don't get blanket immunity, will you accept this plea deal? And he says no. That created a huge problem, and all these lawyers all of a sudden needed to sort it out.
Oh, yeah. And the idea is that after 5 years of negotiation, they're going to spend 20 minutes in the back of the courtroom to please the judge. I mean, it was absolutely absurd.
Yes.
And it was not a comedy of errors, as some of the commentators said.
Now, have Speaking of those commentators, I wanted to see if you've heard of any of this. I've heard plenty of people say they've never seen anything like this before. When I say people, I don't mean just laymen. I mean former federal prosecutors, attorneys everywhere are looking at this and going, I've never seen this ever. This is without precedent. That was, in fact, what the judge asked of the lawyers who were in the room. She said, is there any precedent for this? They said, no, there's no precedent. So have you heard anybody defend this on the grounds that this was a normal plea agreement?
No, but I don't watch CNN and MSNBC, so
good point.
I will say that before they went in, there were some people, I believe it was on CNN, saying they were particularly harsh on Hunter Biden. They would never have charged anyone else. And, you know, I mean, you look at this and the level of absurdity is off the charts. And the thing that's so frustrating is that, you know, the media is going to focus on Trump. At the end of the day, this is it's all about protecting Joe Biden.
Yeah, why focus on Hunter and Joe when you could focus on destroying the life of Donald Trump's maintenance worker at Mar-a-Lago? The guy who hangs the storm shutters needs to be crushed.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's hilarious because I read something today or yesterday about how Hillary Clinton asked her maid once to print out classified documents from her server that was in her bathroom.
Yes.
All right. And nobody said boo about that on the left. I mean, you know, but her emails. You could buy a hat that says, but her emails.
Yes.
You know, everybody, but, you know, the maintenance man under Trump has got to go to jail.
Let me remind people of what you're talking about. Paul Sperry wrote a piece in November of 2016, headline, Clinton directed her maid to print out classified materials. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton routinely asked her maid to print out sensitive government emails and documents, including ones containing classified information from her house in Washington, D.C., emails and FBI memos show. But the housekeeper lacked the security clearance to handle such material. In fact, poor Marina Santos, is her name, was called on so frequently to receive emails that she may hold the secrets to email gate if only the FBI and Congress would subpoena her and the equipment she used. Yeah, where did that go, David Strum, if you have the memory for it?
I don't have the memory for it. In fact, what I just remembered is I read this in a tweet storm that you did today. You got to follow Vince on Twitter.
Listen to this part. Thank you for the plug, by the way. You should follow Vince on Twitter and David Strum for that matter. Listen to this part in the New York Post piece. Just how sensitive were the papers that Santos presumably handled? The FBI noted Clinton periodically received the Presidential Daily Brief, a top-secret document prepared by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies via the secure fax. So here you have Hillary Clinton's maid handling the Presidential Daily Brief. Hillary Clinton, correct me if I'm wrong, was not the president of the United States, thank God. But Donald Trump was the president of the United States. And there are all sorts of unique circumstances given that status, since he had the power to both classify and declassify at will.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And I'm not going to, give you much of an opinion one way or the other. I think the only reason why he kept those documents is because he was hoarding them. He thought, hey, this is cool. And he probably shouldn't have had them. But really, this was not a national security problem. No. This was just, a guy taking some souvenirs that he probably shouldn't have
This should not be A1 on the New York Times. This should not be top fold in any newspaper in America. This should not be a massive Justice Department investigation. It should not be a special counsel affair. There should not be multiple felony charges. You should not be crushing the maintenance worker. This is a paperwork dispute between the current administration and the last one, designed to be a political hit job to meddle in the upcoming election.
Oh, that is exactly what it is. I mean, this week was the Justice Department going to bat for Joe Biden, 3 separate cases, one of which is this absurd one against Donald Trump that, you're right, it's a paperwork dispute. The next is a campaign finance scandal that's 100% Democrats and fraud, stealing from hundreds of thousands of people and shoving it into the pockets of Democrats. And the third is saving Hunter Biden's butt. I mean, it's just unbelievable. People talk about Watergate as if it was some, massive scandal. I mean, this makes Watergate look like
this is nothing. That was nothing compared to this. Isn't it amazing? So I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. I love making predictions because, it will come back. If you're right, you seem like a genius. If you're wrong, you're just like every other political commentator.
Exactly.
Tell me, what do you think happens? Do you think Joe Biden is going to be in a second term? Do you think he makes it through the election?
I think that they are probably going to try to replace him sometime after he sews up the nomination so that they can just put someone else in there. I think they do not want to have the mess that they would have if Kamala and Newsom and everyone else and his brother gets in the race. So I think they want the DNC to be able to pick Joe Biden's replacement. And so, no, I do not expect him to be on the ticket, but I expect him to go through the primaries.
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. David Strom, thank you for being such a keen observer of all of it. I really appreciate your time today, as always.
Always fun. I love being on your show.
Great, man. Thank you. And good. And thanks for the plug. I appreciate the Twitter plug. I need more Twitter followers.
Yeah, you do. As do I.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, sir. Let me take a phone call.
Have a good one.
David Strom over at Hot Air. Great website, by the way. They do such a great job. Let me take Sam calling in from Alexandria. Sam is on line one. Good afternoon, Sam.
Oh, baby. Is it a hot one? Whoa.
Oh, yes, it is. I stepped out for a second, and then the only thing you have to do to convince yourself that it's fine, you say, well, at least it's a dry heat.
Yeah, not in Virginia, baby. I'm sitting on 495. As soon as I get home, I'm going to put a skillet out on the sidewalk, wait about 20 minutes, and see if I can't take a video of a frying egg.
Well, get your practice in, because pretty soon we're not going to be allowed to use our stoves, so you're going to have to do it that way anyway.
There you go. Hey, my thought is the way that I think this is going to move forward is Congress is going to hold back. They're going to do impeachment inquiries to gather evidence. And then they're going to sit back a little bit, wait for the elections. And so depending on how November turns out, then they're going to hit the either outgoing or the reelected Biden with the impeachment. And I think that because they want to definitely leave a mark on the legacy that is Biden, and he certainly deserves impeachment from what we've seen from the border to everything else.
Yes.
And if we could shellac him in a nice presidential race to where he gets thumped, what a twofer. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I find myself tortured about all of this, too. I think an impeachment inquiry is valuable insofar as it provides fresh powers for Congress to get to the bottom of all of this. And if that's the case, and I'm not yet convinced it is, but if that's the case, more power to them. The other is that, I just think as far as general election candidates to run against, Biden is the one. I mean, Biden is such an obvious disaster for the country. And to the extent that you can break any would-be Biden voter out of their malaise, you'd have to do it with a guy who's so obviously failed the American people.
Yeah.
And anyway, you hope that works. But I don't know where I fall on all of this. Because if you put Newsom in there, if Newsom's the nominee, they're just going to conceal his record, and they're going to be and be doing it overtime, and people are less familiar with him.
You're exactly right, and he's got the pretty boy face, and he's slick. He puts a new spin on Slick Willie.
Yeah, he does. Have you seen his wife, by the way? His wife's pretty cute. Have you seen Jennifer Newsom?
I have not. I'll have to look her up.
You should look her up. Home. But here's the thing. I just want to issue a warning. She's cute, but don't fall for it. She's a psychopath. Don't fall for that crazy chick. She's a lunatic. And they're going to try and put this good-looking couple forward, and they're like, "Hey, vote for these people. They're good-looking." Don't fall for it. It's a bad idea.
And that's why we listen to you, because you lay it straight out there, brother. You don't hold back.
I can see this coming a million miles away. I was looking at it. I was like, I saw a picture of it the other day. I was like, oh no, this is not good. She is too cute. But I just need everyone to know she's out. She's not. You don't want her in. Trust me. You think Jill's bad? Wait until Jennifer Newsom's here. Yeah, being a former Army guy, we used to call it that the wife wore her husband's rank. And I guarantee that she does. You want to know a story about her? There's a lot of stories about her, but when she came into office, she doesn't want to be known as the first lady of California. She wants to be known as the first partner, which is like, what is wrong with you?
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It kind of tells you everything. All right. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate the call as always, sir.
Thank you, brother. Yes.
Have a great weekend. Try and stay cool out there. It's 3:53 now. She also, did you know this is a sad story. She ran over her own sister and killed her when they were kids. Did you know that? With a golf cart. And then and she tells this story now every so often. And it's like, that's horrible. She was very young when it happened, but have you noticed that all of the people who want you to cut back on your entire life in order to save the planet are all like type 2 diabetes fat people? Like, you can't keep the food out of your mouth, yet you want to keep the energy out of my house? That's the plan? Yeah. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up with Steve Malloy just minutes away as we focus on saving humanity. Thanks.